What's up, gamers? Today I'm bringing you a list of the 10 most ambitious single-player games that delivered a perfect experience. We're talking about games that came in and revolutionized everything, raised the bar for the industry, and earned that perfect 10 out of 10. These are titles that left their mark in gaming history and continue to influence developers to this day. So get ready, because this list is also 10 out of 10. Let's dive in. If there's one game that deserves to open our list today, that game is Baldur's Gate 3. It managed to transform the complex D&D system into a perfect game and elevated the RPG genre to a whole new level. Larian Studios delivered one of the most deep and detailed games ever made, with over 17,000 different endings. Yes, 17,000. Absolutely mind-blowing. As the third entry in this franchise, they could have played it safe, but no. Larian took everything that made the original Baldur's Gate games great and transformed it into something revolutionary. Speaking a bit about the game, the level of freedom is insane. Every dialogue matters, every decision has real weight. The character stories are deep, the graphics are beautiful, and the combat mechanics are so well done that even people who hate turn-based RPGs end up falling in love. The beginning might intimidate those who've never played D&D, and sometimes you might spend hours just making decisions in a single quest. But even these issues end up being part of the game's charm. Baldur's Gate 3 is definitely a milestone in video game history. It's one of those games that will influence developers for the next 20 years. The attention to detail is surreal, the freedom of choice is unprecedented, and even after more than a year since launch, people are still discovering new things. This is the kind of game that proves video games are art. A 10 out of 10 so well deserved that I'd give it an 11 if I could. Cyberpunk 2077 is a game that demonstrates redemption is totally possible. Especially after the 2.0 update and the Phantom Liberty DLC, Cyberpunk has become that game we all hoped and dreamed for. As a new IP, they could have opted to make a simpler game, but since their first trailer, they showed they wanted to make a massive project. With CD Projekt Red's good reputation at the time, thanks to The Witcher 3, all fans ended up creating sky-high expectations. However, as time passed, delays happened, and it became increasingly clear that developing everything that was promised and shown in the trailers was far from being delivered to fans. The game ended up launching with various performance issues and bugs, which generated immense frustration in all fans who were expecting a perfect game. With the huge negative backlash and even its sale being pulled from PSN by Sony, CD Projekt Red committed to fixing the issues and delivering the game we all expected. Time passed, and today it's possible to say that finally Cyberpunk 2077 has reached the state we wished it had launched in. A super dense and alive city where you really feel like you're in a dystopian future. The districts have their own personality, each mission has multiple ways to be completed, the side quests are so well written that they sometimes surpass even the main campaign. They created gameplay systems that mix RPG with FPS in a unique way. The build system is quite deep. You can be anything from a stealthy hacker to a practically immortal melee fighter. An emotional main story with Keanu Reeves stealing the show as Johnny Silverhand. Unforgettable characters like Panam and Judy. A cyberware system that really changes how you play, and Night City that practically becomes a character itself. Some people still encounter occasional bugs, but the game's transformation is one of the greatest comeback stories in gaming, similar to No Man's Sky. Today, especially on PC and current-gen consoles, it's a completely different experience. In the end, Cyberpunk 2077 managed to become that cyberpunk RPG it promised to be. The way it mixes narrative, meaningful choices, and dynamic gameplay. After many updates, the game finally reached an absurd level of quality, and in my opinion, its place on this list is well deserved. Red Dead Redemption 2 exceeded all fan expectations, which were already high coming from Rockstar Games, and established itself as an industry standard of excellence. Rockstar's ambition to achieve surreal levels of detail in their games was no different with Red Dead Redemption 2, resulting in the creation of a world so detailed it's almost scary. Every NPC lives their own routine. Each animal has unique behavior, and even the mud sticks to your boots and naturally dries over time. A level of detail that borders on insanity. And even though it was released in 2018, it continues to leave players jaw-dropped to this day. Rockstar went far beyond simply telling the Van der Linde gang story. They created a masterpiece that brings tears with Arthur Morgan's journey. This character's transformation throughout the narrative is, without a doubt, one of the most emotional experiences I've ever seen in a game. A narrative that rivals the best Western films, a living world that reacts to your actions, unique missions that never repeat themselves, and animations with impressive realism. Every movement was captured in the minutest detail. Even the way Arthur picks up items changes depending on the angle. The start in Coulter might seem a bit slow for some, and the realism in animations can sometimes frustrate those looking for more agile gameplay. But ironically, even these apparent problems contribute to total immersion in this world. Red Dead Redemption 2 earned its place on this list by being much more than just a game. It's a life experience. When you finish the journey, you feel a genuine void, as if you've lost a real friend, literally transforming into a gaming masterpiece. We couldn't leave out The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild, a game that completely redefined what it means to create an open world. Nintendo took a 30-year-old series with established formulas and changed everything. The developers must have literally said, "What if we let the player do anything?" And when I say anything, I mean literally anything. Climb any mountain, fly from anywhere, solve puzzles in ways the developers didn't even think of. As a new Zelda version, they could have done more of the same. Linear temples, specific items, the old formula that already worked, but thankfully, they didn't. They created such a complex and interactive physics system that even today, 7 years later, people are still discovering new ways to use the game's mechanics. With a living world that reacts to everything you do, a weather system that affects gameplay, and freedom of exploration that makes you feel like a kid discovering a giant playground for the first time, plus an extremely beautiful art direction. Some people complain about shrine puzzles being repetitive, and weapons breaking can be annoying at first. But it's exactly this system that makes you try different strategies instead of sticking to a single weapon throughout the entire game. Breath of the Wild was a revolution in the franchise and in game design. It's one of those games that makes history, a 10 out of 10 that inspired an entire generation of developers and continues to be a reference to this day. And even with Tears of the Kingdom expanding these ideas even further, the original remains a unique masterpiece. God of War Ragnarok came to prove that sequels can surpass the original in every aspect, taking a game that was already perfect like God of War 2018 and deciding to make it even bigger. Santa Monica Studio not only expanded the world and story, but managed to tell an even more personal and emotional narrative. As a sequel, Ragnarok had massive pressure on its shoulders. The first one had already revolutionized the series, changed the camera, the combat, Kratos, and still they managed to expand everything, with more realms, more stories, more memorable characters, with each edition making perfect sense in the story's context. The combat is more brutal and satisfying than ever. The performances by Christopher Judge and Sonny Soljic as Kratos and Atreus are tear-jerking, insane boss fights, and incredible scenery. With each realm being unique and full of personality, Ragnarok did the impossible, took an already nearly perfect formula and still managed to improve it. The way it ties up all the loose ends of the story, how it develops each character, how it makes you care about every moment. It's a masterclass in how to make a sequel. This is one of those games that shows that video games are the most powerful way to tell stories. A game that proves that sometimes the sequel can indeed surpass the original, especially when made with so much love and dedication. The Witcher 3. Wild Hunt is a game that redefines what an RPG can be and simply can't be left off this list. It managed to win 7 Game Awards, including Game of the Year in 2015. CD Projekt Red's ambition is something surreal. They created an extremely alive and dense world, where the side quests are deeper than many main storylines out there, and that's not an exaggeration. Each side mission is like a true TV episode, with complex characters and moral decisions that really make you think. In the third entry of the series, they could have just delivered a decent conclusion to Geralt's story, but they created a gigantic open world, where every village, every character, every Witcher contract carries a unique and memorable story, and the DLCs Hearts of Stone and Blood and Wine are practically complete games on their own. The game has cinema-worthy writing, unforgettable characters like Ciri and Yennefer, and a combat system that transforms you into a true Witcher, with potions and oils. The combat might feel a bit clunky at first, and you'll die a few times falling from ridiculously low heights, but once you get the hang of it, these become just insignificant details in the game's grandeur. Even after almost a decade since release, with a recent next-gen version, the game continues to be an absolute masterpiece that makes many modern titles seem superficial in comparison. Hades proved that a roguelike can indeed have a phenomenal story and still revolutionize the genre. Supergiant Games took a genre known for being repetitive and transformed each death into part of the narrative. Every time you die in Hades, the story continues. The characters remember your previous attempts, comment on your choices, and the narrative develops organically. That's genius! As the studio's new game, they could have followed the formula of Bastion or Transistor, but they created a combat system so fluid and addictive that even after 100 hours, you still discover new power combinations. The game's art looks like a painting in motion, impeccable voice acting with thousands of dialogue lines that rarely repeat, a soundtrack that gives you chills, and that feeling of constant progress even when you die. I call that perfection. Some say the endgame can get repetitive and certain weapon combinations are stronger than others. But seriously, in a game with so much variety, that's basically nitpicking. Hades didn't just revolutionize roguelikes, it showed that it's possible to tell a complex and emotional story even in a genre focused on repetition. The way it ties together Greek mythology, gameplay, and character development is perfect. This is one of those games where you start thinking just one more try, and before you know it, the sun's coming up. A game that proves innovation and excellence can come from anywhere, not just from big studios. Dark Souls 3 has an incredible sense of achievement, turning every boss victory into an absolute moment. From Software Incorporated all the learning from Demon's Souls, Dark Souls 1 and 2, and Bloodborne creating the most refined Souls experience. The puzzle-like level design is excellent, where each area connects in super cool ways and every enemy was strategically positioned to teach the player something new. Compared to its predecessors, the combat was sped up, the bosses became more epic and complex than ever, and the series' lore was well tied together, making our brains explode when understanding the whole narrative. With meticulously precise combat where every mistake has its weight, unforgettable bosses like Soul of Cinder and Sister Freed, and an art direction that blends the dark with the divine. The feeling of discovering a shortcut after 50 deaths surpasses the satisfaction of platinuming many other games. Some beginners might feel intimidated, and certain areas like Farron Keep can cause initial frustration. However, each obstacle has a clear purpose, and every death turns into a new lesson. Dark Souls 3 earned its spot on this list by being the embodiment of difficult but fair. It's a work that respects player intelligence, rewarding observation, and persistence. Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain completely redefined the stealth genre in gaming. Kojima Productions created a game so free and so complex that even 9 years after release, players are still discovering new ways to complete missions. In each base, every situation can be solved in dozens of different ways, from using a horse with golden armor to using a balloon to kidnap a sheep, and all of this makes sense in the game. The game system is impressive. As Kojima's last work in the series, they transformed a linear game into a giant open world without losing the stealth essence. The enemies are super intelligent and adapt to your playstyle. If you aim for headshots too much, they start wearing helmets. If you only operate at night, they show up with night vision goggles. It's an insane level of detail. The stealth mechanics are perfect, the companions are super useful, especially D-Dog, who's the best. The base system still makes you feel like a real military commander. The third act is a bit rushed and the story more fragmented than other Metal Gear games, but the gameplay is so good that you don't even care about that. Metal Gear Solid V totally deserves its place on this list. It's a game that elevated the stealth genre to another level and showed how to make a perfect sandbox where all systems connect. A beautiful game that continues influencing developers to this day and proves that Kojima bid farewell to the series with a golden key. Final Fantasy VII Remake completely revolutionized the concept of remakes in gaming. Square Enix transformed a turn-based RPG from 1997 into a spectacular modern action experience and did it without losing the essence of the original game. With a giant dose of courage, they took Midgar, which was just the beginning of the game, and created a complete 40-hour adventure packed with content and much more developed characters. The combat is something else. It mixes action and strategy in such a natural way that it seems like the game was always meant to be this way. And each character has their own fighting style, which makes everything even more incredible. The graphics are beautiful, the new music gives you chills, and the action scenes are cinema-worthy. Just look at the fight against Abzu in the sewers, or the famous staircase scene to understand. There are some basic side missions and some story changes that might startle longtime fans, but these changes opened up lots of new possibilities for the series' future. The most impressive thing is that the game managed to please both old fans and new players, creating an experience that respects the past while building something totally new. And for these reasons, Final Fantasy VII Remake closed out this list, being a game that elevated the quality level of remakes and showed that it's possible to transform a classic into something modern and spectacular without losing its soul. And that's it, folks. These were the 10 most ambitious games that achieved perfection. Tell me in the comments which of these games you've completed, and if you agree, they really deserve to be in this video. If you enjoyed this list, leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more content like this, and take a look up here at the channel's other videos that have lots more quality lists for you to watch. Thanks for the company, good gameplay, and see you in the next video.